I was born in Seattle, Washington, grew up in Tukwila. I had a loving mother, a loving sister. Pretty much my entire family was loving. My mom always worked a lot to provide for us, and my dad wasn't really around either because he had a pretty bad alcohol problem. I didn't have abuse in my family really. I didn't have, active drug and alcohol use around me to the point to where I'd be like, oh, that seems fun. Let me try to grab one of that. So what the turning point was for me was program DARE in school. But basically it was meant to keep kids off of drugs and to keep kids to not use or to not drink, and it had the complete opposite effect on me. I was 12 years old when I started using. By the time I was 14, I had tried cocaine and ecstasy, and by the time I was 16, I was fully blown addicted to crystal meth. No matter how hard you try to contain the amount you use or contain how often you use or whatever, it's gonna get you eventually. So it didn't take long for me to go off the deep end. I tried to get clean, I relapsed. I tried to get clean, I relapsed, and then all of a sudden I found out how awesome barbiturates and opiates are. So barbiturates are like Xanax, antidepressants, like that kind of thing. Opiates are basically painkillers, Percocet, Oxycontin, all that. Once heroin came, it was the most destructive thing in my life ever. I mean, I've done every drug in the book, from marijuana all the way up to shooting alcohol, like vodka, for instance, and by far heroin has been the most destructive thing on the face of this planet. I would use more to try to numb out the fact of how awful of a person I was. But then I would use, and I would feel awful for using, so I would use more to numb out that awfulness, and it was just a constant battle that I just couldn't win. At one point, I wasn't even I couldn't get high anymore. I was just using to not go into withdrawals, severe dope sick withdrawals, and it got to the point to where I was just fed up with it. So I tried to kill myself by overdosing. And the heroin was so thick after I cooked it up in the spoon that I couldn't even hardly suck it into the needle because it was that thick of a dose, and shot it up and woke up about 3 hours later. My beautiful boy at the time, he was just a little chunky thing in diapers. I'd leave him down in the car by himself as I went up into the dealer's house to get my dope, and sometimes I'd be up there for a minute because I needed to get high first because I was starting to withdraw. And this is the constant thing over and over and over and over and over again, It just never ended. It was utter chaos. At that time I had to shoot up every few hours to not go into severe withdrawals. I didn't know what to do. I was desperate. I was a desperate heroin addict, so I was like, man, I need a lot of money and I need it quick. Where can I go to get some money? So I decided to go rob a bank. I had never robbed a store in my life. I've stole groceries and stole clothes to, basically provide for myself while I was homeless, but that's pretty much it. So I went in and I robbed a bank. I got caught. It got to the point where I got FBI and ATF, Kent Covington police, K9 units circling my whole neighborhood, and I'm being interviewed by the FBI agents, and I knew the gig was up. I couldn't play it any longer, so I admitted to it. I went to prison for it. You would think being in prison for a certain amount of time would keep me from using, but I went home. I'm like, I got all this time clean. A month later, I was shooting up again. And then years go by, and this is where it comes into what I was just saying, is I wasn't even supposed to be in Kitsap County, but the dope was good, and my connection up in Linwood was not happening. I needed it, you know. I took a very long trip from Linwood down around the water and then back up to Bremerton. I get out and she says, "F you, Travis, I'm not giving you anything, none of my stuff, you're a POS, this and that." And she just started going off. So I knew where her drugs were, I knew the combination to her lockbox, so I went to take her dope. She didn't want me to take her dope, so she grabbed a hold of her lockbox also. So there was a tug of war match. Things got escalated. It didn't get physical, but things got escalated. There was yelling matches and cops were called. Finally, she let go. She opened her lockbox and gave me a needle of heroin, and I took off. Get in my car, take off, and then I parked in the parking lot of the Burger King in Bremerton, right up the road from the ferry terminal. That's where the cops got me. So Kitsap County Jail. Okay, so I go in there May 24th of 2019, and I just was done, you know. A day or two goes by, and then, you know, as the days go by, I get more and more sick. They don't give you any kind of medications in jail. They pretty much just give you powdered Gatorade mix to put in your water, and that's really all they give you. You know, I don't know if you've ever heard of anybody who's had a heroin detox before, especially a cold turkey one, but it's like the worst flu imaginable. All the symptoms, right? Amplify it by 1,000 and then pretend like Mike Tyson just completely lit up your entire body for an hour, and that's how bad your muscle pains were. All that together, that's basically what cold turkey heroin detox is. You can't sleep, you can't eat, you're so tired because you haven't slept in days, but your body hurts so bad so you can't get comfortable and sleep. So it eventually starts to play games on your mental state, you know. Not only are you freaking out because you're detoxing and you want to get high, but you're mentally starting to lose it because you haven't slept, even though you're so utterly sleep deprived. So with all that being said, a few days go by, and for whatever reason, I don't know. I've never talked to God. I've never prayed. I don't know how to, or I didn't know how to pray, or I didn't know. So what I did one night when they shut the cells down and turned all the lights off or dimmed them down is I took the towel they issue you and I blindfolded myself just completely. So that way it was dark, and I just kind of sat on my bunk and I had a conversation with God the best way I knew how to. I'm like, "Look, man, I don't know if you're hearing me. I don't know if you even want to listen to me after everything I've done, but I can't do this anymore. I'm so sick of burning bridges. I'm so sick of hurting my family. I'm so sick of hurting myself. I'm so sick of being sick. You know, I'm sick of being a failure, you know, like I was just sick of everything, completely, absolutely done with every aspect of my addictive life. So I don't know how I do this, but Lord, I need your help. I know everything I've tried in the past was my way, and one thing I haven't tried yet is your way. So what else do I got to lose, you know?" As soon as I said that, even with all the, see all my hair standing up? I don't know if you could pick that up right there, but it gets me every time, even 4 years later. It's horrible I felt, the body aches, the stomach issues that go along with that kind of thing. I was more, once I gave it to the Lord, I was more at peace. I was more calm. I was comfortable. I mean, my hair itself had goosebumps. If that was a thing, that's what it felt like. But head to toe, everything, I was so full of peace and warmth and love that I've never felt it prior to that or since then, ever. I've started reading the Bible. The first time I ever opened up the Bible ever, I just did one of those because I didn't know. In jail they issue you free Gideon Bibles, right? So I just opened it up, and the first thing my eyes landed on was Proverb 14 verse 12, which I believe says, "There is a way that seems right to a man, but it will end in death." I'm pretty sure that's what it says. But I said, "No way, Lord, that's crazy," because that's essentially, everything I had been living prior to that salvation I was telling you about in my jail cell should have killed me. I even tried killing myself, and it didn't work. I heard there was, some sort of Bible thing going on, or church service or something like that. I didn't really know. I just needed to be out of my cell, so I just got up, couldn't hardly walk. I hadn't eaten days, I hadn't slept in days. My whole body hurt. I was having a hard time keeping anything down. So I get up, I go out, and I just kind of waddle out to the nearest table, which is probably only about 10 feet away from my cell, so I didn't have to walk too far. So I sat out there for, I think it was 45 minutes, but this is where I met Mark Eckenrode and Duncan. Duncan would play his guitar, give the worship, and then Mark Eckenrode would give the word. And as soon as that was my first service ever, was in jail, and I was essentially hooked at that point. I mean, prior, I had my salvation moment. It was the first service I've ever been to, and it stuck with me forever. And it was either Wednesday or Thursdays, but every Wednesday or Thursday they would come in. Duncan would play the worship, Mark would give the word, and then once they sent us back in our cell, the top level of cells would come down for the same thing, and I would be right at my door, peeking through my little jail cell window, listening to Duncan play music and Mark giving the word. And so I found out where Duncan and Mark actually went to church in Gig Harbor, and that was at Harborview Fellowship. So, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'll see you guys there when I get out, whenever that is, this and that." But they hear that all the time. Nobody ever actually goes to church when they get out of jail, But I went because I moved into the David's house, which ran by John. You know John, and so we went to church. I don't know, a couple days later. I think I got out on a Friday, and we went to church on Sunday, and that's where I actually met Duncan and Mark and Mark's wife Katie Eckenrode in person, outside of a jail setting. And they even said that too. It's like, yeah, people tell us all the time when they get out they're going to come see us at church, but nobody ever actually does it, And that was the first church outside of jail, first church I've ever been to, and it was amazing. I'd never experienced that kind of stuff. I thought getting out of jail with my past and stuff would be I was kind of sketched out going into a church for the first time because of everything that has happened, but it was full of love, and it almost brought me to tears and stuff because of how inviting everybody was. But coming from the darkness that I lived in for so long into the love and life of a church, it just wasn't. I was almost uncomfortable with it because I was so used to bad stuff happening that good stuff was finally happening, and it was making me uncomfortable because I wasn't used to it, So after that, I continued going to church. I continued doing Bible studies with Mark. The discipleship house I was a part of, Katie Eckenrode was a huge influence on that house, and anybody who came into it, anybody who has ever met that woman, or that couple for that matter, knows the light that's within those two people. So they will always, Mark, Katie, and Duncan will always have a special place in my heart because of what they did for me when I was in jail. and what they continue to do for me even now to this day. I've learned to love myself again. I've learned to love others. I've learned to forgive even when I don't want to forgive. It's sometimes a lot easier said than done, but it's still what the Lord calls us to do. People are calling me for advice now, which I never thought anybody would ever call me for advice. I'm like, nobody wants to call a raging drug addict for, hey, what should I do, you know? But, you know, people, family, friends, loved ones of others are struggling with certain things I used to struggle with, and that's when these people are coming forward to ask me what to do about their friends or family. And I'm able to help them, and for the longest time I didn't know, it says somewhere in the Bible, all things work together for the greater good of those who love Christ. So for the longest time I didn't know how my past, my darkness, and everything I went through was going to help anybody, you know. But now I'm able to help others. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just, you know, I just absolutely love helping other people, and there's never enough opportunity that I feel I have to help other people.